And welcome back to the special edition of Hannity, Boomtown. Now let's go back to Washington, D.C., where Peter Schweitzer shows us how Aspen and Beverly Hills, they have nothing on our nation's capital.
Washington, D.C. is America's new boomtown. We traditionally think of the nation's capital as a town of museums and monuments. But increasingly, Washington, D.C. is a town of luxurious living. This is a town now where you can buy Italian sports cars, Ferrari, Lamborghini, Maserati.
We are a destination, and the location borders two wealthiest counties in the United States of America. So it's Loudoun and Fairfax County. So we have a lot of customers in this area who can afford our cars, and we don't need to advertise. When we get a complaint from the factory, complaint is you have too many cash buyers. Because usually it's the other way around, some people are trying to reach, their income so they can qualify to buy a product. In our case, they can very comfortably afford it and pay cash.
Or if you prefer fine wine, that's available as well.
They are interested in award-winning wines. They know what they're looking for.
A lot of wineries have to make kind of like a throwaway wine, but we can't sell that kind of wine here. They like the higher end stuff.
You have restaurants opening everywhere, especially from New York restaurateurs to Vegas restaurateurs opening in this area because business is steady year-round.
Washington, D.C. is a town that is unlike the other boomtowns of America's past in that the luxurious living that's afforded here doesn't come from its own creation of wealth, but it comes from extracting wealth from the rest of us. When other towns created automobiles or beef cattle for American consumption, it made them a boomtown. But the luxurious lifestyle that Washington has today, which is comparable to Beverly Hills or Wall Street, is very different because that wealth creation is really wealth extraction from the rest of us. In Washington, D.C. today, there's a game being played, and there are always winners and losers. But the reality is that when that game is played, it's played with our money, and we're the ones that end up paying for it.
We continue with Peter Schweitzer and Steve Bannon. So wait a minute, they have too many cash buyers and they don't have to advertise. Yeah. And that's for what? What's the average price? Is that a Lamborghini dealer?
Yeah, Lamborghini and Ferrari. So you've got cars.
Maserati.
Maserati. These, you take your pick. These are cars that are say $325,000, and they have cash buyers. Look, Sean, we don't fault.
And no shortage of them.
That's exactly right.
By the way, you're right. I'm not begrudging people, but this is all connected. Right. To this, frankly, corrupt, can we just call it what it is, corrupt economy?
Yeah, it's extracted money. They're not creating a product that people are freely choosing to buy. They're selling access or they're selling connections and relationships. And so we don't fault the businesses that we highlight here because they're just earning a living like other people are, but it's the system and the corrosive system. And here's something to think about, Sean. We used to think of when JFK and his family was in the White House, it was Camelot. They brought their wealth from the rest of the country to Washington and created glamour. A lot of the glamour now is people coming to Washington with no wealth and making it off of government and buying $325,000 sports cars and paying cash for it.
We've come a long way from ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. In all seriousness here, they're all in this for themselves.
When the average price of a house is $180,000 and a guy's sitting there going, we don't have to advertise, and guys walk in here, unlike in Miami and Los Angeles, and they can pay cash, it shows you that the wealth and the luxurious lifestyle of the rich and powerful has metastasized. And you can look at that anywhere you go in Washington. You see the fine restaurants, which you can't get into, the nicest boutiques. I mean, if people,
I don't go there, Steve.
I'm just as an observer.
Steve. I've never been to one Washington Correspondents' Dinner, Steve. So, but you're right.
I tell you what, the reason you don't go down there because you don't like that whole system and how it's set up.
I don't like the whole scene.
And I think that we have to start looking at this with a jaundiced eye. This thing is out of control. It's what the founders never wanted. They never wanted cities like Paris and London and Rome that extracted all the talent, extracted all the wealth to one central location. But that's what you have today.
But what's I guess so sinister, it's not like they're producing products that people can buy. For example, a traditional boomtown, let's say it's an oil town. Right. All right, so a lot of jobs associated with
Silicon Valley.
People making Silicon Valley is another case. Gold Rush, we want to go back a little further.
Yes.
You can literally pinpoint what they're doing.
And they're making people's lives better.
Yeah.
You know, you've got cars, you've got beef in Abilene, Texas. Washington, D.C., it's really extraction. And to show you how bad it is, Sean, actually Lamborghini's North American headquarters, it's not in Beverly Hills, it's not in New York, it's in suburban Washington, D.C. That's actually where they put it. This is where they see the growth taking place. This is where they see an opportunity to make money in a way that they aren't going to anywhere else. And that is extremely troubling.
You know what? I guess the problem with the poor average American that works hard, plays by the rules, pays their taxes, obeys the laws, all these things, raises their kids. Their biggest problem is, I guess, they're not buddying up to people, buying the right people an expensive bottle of wine and taking them out to dinner and wining and dining and saying, listen, I need your help on this bill.
Yeah.
I need a provision here. Can you help me out?
Yeah.
And that's what's happening, and they're all getting what they want.
Yes, no, that's exactly right. You know, if middle-class Americans could hire lobbyists, their lives would be better. But, of course, our system would be bankrupt by now. So this is the challenge. It's a zero-sum game in Washington, D.C. The success and wealth of Washington, D.C. doesn't create wealth for the rest of the country. It sucks it up. Yeah. So we need to recognize that because Washington is a boomtown, that is bad news for the rest of the country. And until we do something about it, until we sort of cut off that supply or reduce it, it's just going to get worse.
All right, stay right there. We're going to come back. We'll continue more right edition of Hannity Boomtown, and we continue now with Peter Schweitzer and Steve Bannon. Look, I agree with earlier comments both of you have made. Both sides are guilty, but the party of big government is the Democratic Party. We heard the president in his inaugural address. He's now doubled down on big spending. He gets his stimulus passed, $6 trillion in new debt. I mean, every other president up to this point, $10 trillion in debt. He's going to literally create or accumulate more debt than every other president combined ahead of him. Is it worse under Obama? Stimulus, health care, has that had a big impact?
I think it has. I mean, there's no question that his agenda was to, in a sense, spend us out of the recession, and that really didn't work. And a lot of that money ended up being captured in Washington, D.C. In fact, if you look at a per capita average stimulus money, Washington, D.C. got 9 times what the average American outside of Washington.
How does Washington get 15% of all of the federal budget in terms of spending? How did that happen?
That's the crisis we're in. The crisis we're in is where you have a president, or a party of big government, and their junior partner is the party of little big government, but there's no party of limited government. And so what we have, and you see this with the stimulus, you see this with the bailouts of the banks, that everything is concentrated in Washington now. These guys, the rest of the country has not pulled out of this recession. Washington does. They have the lowest unemployment, they have the highest per cap income, they have growth, they have a real estate market that's the most robust in the country. They're doing fine. And if you look at President Obama, and by the way, we are nonpartisan in this. This is both parties' problems. However, what's scary, if you listen to the president's inaugural address, where he kind of ran as a centrist this last time, he kind of doubles down. And if you forget the policies he's talking about, but if you look at the scale of the government, he's very upfront. Bigger government is a solutions provider. And that means this problem we're talking about of a permanent political class is only going to get worse. So when you look at sequestration, when you look at all these things that are going to lay at the budget, spending cuts and the debt ceiling, we believe it's just all a dog and pony show. That the reality here is this thing, there's really not going to get cut. It's only going to get larger.
He never spoke at his inaugural address about balancing our budgets, living within our means, making some difficult choices. Just the opposite.
Right.
He seems to want to lock in this permanent welfare dependency mentality and state that now exists in the country, which pretty much guarantees America becomes Greece.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, no, I mean, there's no question. You have this philosophical, ideological commitment to growing government, but you also have the sad reality that there are a lot of go-along to get-along types in leadership positions. So, what we like to think of, unfortunately, is that politics in Washington is a little bit now like professional wrestling, okay? There's this demonstration going on, but it's kind of scripted, and it doesn't really get to the full truth of what's going on.
There are 2 other issues, though, that we haven't dealt with yet. One is the media. They're not doing specials on this.
Right.
Number 2, American people, you know what? I don't know if they're either aware or they don't care. You want to weigh in here, but the bottom line is they voted in Obama. I said, it got Chris Matthews all mad. He didn't get a tingle up his spine. When I literally said, all right, you voted for Obama. I accept the results of the election. Good luck with that, because I know socialism doesn't work.
I think, by the way, the mainstream media, as you know, we've been working with you guys on this thing for a long time to think through these issues. New York Times, finally a week ago, had an article about this. We hope the mainstream media starts every week to focus on the permanent political class. Well, I think I think the American people, if they start to demand this, and I think the more times we do shows like this and bring it to light, that people are going to get angry. The other part of your question, I don't think the DNA of this country's changed. When Governor Romney talked about the 47%, I think the problem we have to start looking at is the corporations and the big government, they're in partnership to drive these programs. One of the things we're trying to show in this special is the fact that there's a business model in Washington, D.C. that has an industrial logic to grow government, okay? So it's not that people, I don't think, want these entitlements. I think these things are growing ever more, and they're making benefits easier to get to. I think if you go to the heart of it, which is go to this Gordian knot of corporations and big government and guys that economically succeed from that, we can start to get to the heart of the problem.
The problem is that the infrastructure now is so ingrained. This is now the foundation.
Yes.
This is how things are done.
Right.
And, you know, very few people seem to be aware of it. And that then becomes, wow, we have to really change the system. I think it's going to take a lot of pain before people wake up.
No, I think you're right, Sean. And we have to remember, with the mainstream media, at least with several members of the media, I mean, they're part of this ecosystem. They live in Washington, D.C. They like the...
They want access. They're out at the dinners. They're out at the parties.
They like
the very things we don't go to.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, you dragged me, you and Breitbart. When was that? We did a concert for the troops.
And we brought you over to our house.
And I went over to your house, and I said, I got to get out of here. I don't like this place.
Exactly.
And I ran out of town as quick as I could.
Exactly.
Well, listen, it's been a very, very informative hour. This is important stuff. Good work. We're going to continue it, and we'll follow up in the days, weeks, months to come, okay?
Thank you, sir.
All right, guys.